short simon today, simon Shin Lamed Gimel, Shalol Lefanos Eitze b'Shabbos. You're not allowed to clear out a storehouse on Shabbos. Says the Mechaber, Eitze shel Tvua. If you have a storehouse of produce, shel Kadayayin, or of barrels or jugs of wine, even though you're allowed to go into the Eitze and get a bottle of wine or something else, you can't start clearing it unless there is a mitzvah need. You clear it out so that you've got room for achnos tzorchim, you've got guests, they need somewhere to sleep, that they need to set up a base of medrash or something, so that would be allowed. And how do you clear it out? If it's a large storehouse, you're allowed to take out 5 boxes, containers. Each kupa has 3 soim. And we'll see in Mishnah exactly what it is. If it only has in its entirety anyway 5 kupos, then you can't clear it fully. But mafana mehen arba kupos, you can take out 4 out of those 5. Avol kulo lo yefane, but you can't empty it out totally. Shema yovel hashves gumos, because imagine the floor in this sort of warehouse, storehouse is earthen floor. If you totally clear it, the concern is you might be meshame gumos. But if you've kept something there, you're less likely to do that. Says the Ramah, v'chol shvus she'etiru mishum tzorech mitzvah, and any shvus which is permitted. This is of course a shvus. There's no issa deraisa to do it, but it's a drabanon, and you're doing the tzorech mitzvah mutar gamkein l'tzorech orchim. Then that would also be allowed l'tzorech orchim. V'lo mikri orchim. And by the way, guests doesn't mean social guests. It means real guests, people who really need hospitality. V'lo mikri orchim elishenis archu etzle bebeisai. That they're staying in your house, or you're inviting guests who were staying with other people. If you just have your friend round for Shabbos lunch, that's not called hachnasus orchim, that's called socializing. Ve'ena sudas mitzvah, rak sudas rishus, which is okay, it's allowed, but it's not sudas mitzvah. Says the Mishnah Berurah, so you're allowed to go into the storehouse and to get a bottle of wine or some other things, because the point is they're not muktzah. Why? The Chaim on Krib Shimon, we paskin like Krib Shimon, the less they muktzah. You've taken out some foods to dry and you set them aside for a longer period to become raisins, for example. That is muktzah. You've set them aside actively for and they're not fit again until they've dried out. Like we discussed. But if you don't want to eat them, you just want to clear the space, that's the problem. The whole problem over here is it's a tircha yaseira. It's considered extra bother, effort, or it's an uvda duchal. It's a weekday type of activity, and therefore you can't do that. So again, the focus of this simon is you're not allowed to clear out an eitze on Shabbos unless it's ledvar mitzvah. To go there and to take 1 or 2 items, that's of course allowed because we pass like Reb Shimon that it's not muktzah, and it's only a problem if it was set aside for longer to like grogers and smoking. But if you want to take a bottle of wine from the storehouse, that would be okay. But to empty it out fully is a problem because of tirchi yaseira or uvda tuchol, and that you can't do unless it's the tzorech mitzvah. But even then, you can't do it fully. You should leave a little bit because you might come to be meshame gumos. So says the Mishnah Berurah, also lahaschil lefanoisei ela ledvar mitzvah. You can only do ledvar mitzvah. You can't begin otherwise. Says the Mishnah Berurah base, even a smaller amount, you can't start clearing it on Shabbos or mashma. The implication is the imhischil me'erev Shabbos. If you began on erev Shabbos on Friday afternoon, then you can continue that on Shabbos, but not fully, just less than 4 or 5 of these containers. You can make a pathway with your feet, by way of you coming in and out. That's not considered clearing it. That's just making a bit of a pathway so I can get the bottle of wine which is at the end of the storehouse. And then you're only allowed to do it l'dvar mitzvah. Says the Mishnah Berurah Dalet, va'afilu be'inyan sheyesh by Orach. So even if it involves quite a lot of efforts, Kagoin, Lahagbiyam and Shalom, for example, you've got to raise them or you've got to lower them, B'chalonos through windows, Shebakaisel, Olahiridam, Besulamos, or Letatlam, Gag Legag, even that, which involves a lot of effort, ladders and roofs and things like that, it's mutz if it's Lidvar mitzvah. But even then, there is a limit. If it's a Reitz Gadol, you can be Mefane Chomish Kupos. Says the Mishmura, hey, v'lo yoseh, mishum tircha, because more than that is a big effort, and that's not allowed on Shabbos. V'chanal b'sif kotan aleph. Shema yovei, and even then you can't empty it out fully. Why? Because you might be meshav gumois. Says the Mishmura, sif kotan vov, hainu shema yireh gumois b'karkois. You might see ditches in the floor of the oitzer, b'karkois ha'oitzer, v'yovel ha'shreisam, and you might come to level them. V'afilu ein shom ele shalosh ha'arba kupos asa. Even if you've only got 3 or 4 containers in the whole oitzer, emptying it out totally to expose the entire floor is not allowed, because you might come to Meshav Gumes, which could involve a deraisa of Chayresh or things like that. But for Chol Shvus, what's this going on? Zayin. This is the Ramah. For Chol Shvus, Shetir Mishum Tzorech Mitzvah, Gamkin Letzorech Erchim is allowed. Ayin Simen Shin Zayin Sif Hei. Letzorech Erchim Shabalabayas Hamazamnam Oisa Mitzvah. Because you inviting them is the mitzvah. Or Kamoisha Amr Chazal, the Gedoyla Hachnosas Erchim, Yoisim Kabolas Pnei Shchina. That's how great Hachnosas Erchim is. Avol Kashe Zimein. But if you invite, this is the Ramah at the end, friends, that's not Mikri Archim, that's called Sudas Rishus, that's just socializing, and that's not sufficient grounds for you to start clearing out parts of your Eitzah. Says Mr. Brewer, if you've got an Orach, a real Orach, and you invite somebody to come in honor of your Orach, then the person you're inviting in order to give cover to your Orach has got a din of an Orach, and you can therefore clear out some more space for him. Then that would certainly be allowed if the reason why you need the things is for a Sudas mitzvah. Okay, Seif base. When you empty out these 4 or 5 containers, don't do it in small little bags. So you're going backwards and forwards 100 times with a small load each time. I'm not carrying heavy things too often, because on the contrary, you're going to be going backwards and forwards 100 times, and that's more of an afshemil, so it's more of a noise about it, and better to carry a larger amount fewer times than to carry a smaller amount on many, many times, because it's considered more afshemilsa, it's noise, and it's more uvden dechol, and less shabbosdik. Okay, no Mishnah Bra on base, and let's just finish off Gimel. Elu arba chomesh kupay shemafana hainu lo reach echod. When the Mechaber said in Aleph that you can clear away 4 or 5 containers, that's for one Orach. Bolo harba, but if you have many guests, mafana b'shir hazeh lechol orech v'orech. This is an ashir for each guest. So 4 or 5 containers for each guest. So long as one person is not doing all of the clearing, because that's a massive tircha. Each person should clear for himself, or somebody else clears for him. But you shouldn't do the entire amount, because otherwise it will amount to a big tircha. So it concludes the remark. If you got barrels of wine which were brought on a cart or something, also lo'ridim b'Shabbos, you can't empty the cart on Shabbos. Unless it's the covered archim, because then it's like you're allowed to be mefana the oitzer, so too you're allowed to unload the wagon if it's for archim or for a mitzvah. Says the Mishnah Berurah Shehuvu, afilu be'erev Shabbos, even if the wagon rocked up on erev Shabbos, because if it came on Shabbos itself, then you've got a problem, because maybe the goods came michutz l'tchum. And your das, we're talking about a situation where your das on erev Shabbos was to drink them, and therefore they're not muktzah. Still, emptying the wagon that arrived on erev Shabbos is an uvda dechol, a weekday activity or a tirchi yaser, and therefore you're not allowed to do it. But you should use it whilst you're sitting on the agala. That would be okay, but you can't empty the agala. But if there's no alternative, you need kiddush wine, you've got guests, you want to give them some wine, and there's no alternative, shari leparkon, if they cover the Shabbos, bechlal dva mitzvah. If it's covered Shabbos, then that would be bechlal a dva mitzvah to allow you to do it. Yudalev lecovered archim, va'afilu hachim uyosim etezvav so'in osa. But if the load is so big that it's bigger than tesvav so'in, it's osa. Now, what is tesvav so'in? Tesvav so'in imhu chovis amo al amo berum amo v'gimlet boys. Imagine you've got a container which is width, length, and height, and amo, so it's like that. So you've got that, and then height. So you've got quite a big container. That is 15 amma. If, however, it's going to come to a loss, in mutzah b'zeh amir lein Yehudi, I am b'simen shin zayin sifhei b'simen shin lamed. V'mein Yehudi may ask parkam b'Shabbos ein tzorech nimchus b'yodei. So if the guy does it himself, then that would be allowed. And in the footnote number 9, he gives a few categorizations of when you're allowed to. For example, Mutza, he goes, the Shulchan Aruch writes in Shin Zayin, Mutza le'mel nachri lasos issa drabonim b'makom mixas chayli, b'makom tzarech harbe mipnei mitzvah. So to do a drabonim, which is this would be, then if it's mipnei mitzvah tzarech harbe, there are yesh matzirim, yesh oisrim, and there are different opinions about it, but the footnote 9 describes it. So just to summarize what we've said today, if you've got an oitzer, which is you're allowed to go in there and take a few. You can take the bottle of wine from the oitzer, but to empty the oitzer on Shabbos is a problem because of tirchi seira of the duchol. But l'tzarech archim or l'tzarech mitzvah, you're allowed to do it in a limited way, not fully, because fully is a problem of mashav and